Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with your 2025 WWE WrestleMania 41 Night 1 Instant Analysis. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and we are here to break down everything that happened on the first of the two-night WWE WrestleMania 41. 7 matches on the card, some major developments by the time WWE went off the air. The Silver King, whose voice you hear right now, vintage Chris Vanini, he will be along momentarily. We're going to break down all of it, full results, full analysis, and both match and entire show grades. All of that coming up momentarily. Before we get to it, briefly, allow the Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So please, folks,
stop being marks for yourselves and go back to being a mark for me.
Leave us some 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Take some extra time. Leave a 5-star written review on Apple. We'll read it on the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Those 5-star reviews, though, on Spotify, super, super important as well. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast, but really follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can send in questions and comments for the show that we will read on the air around NXT Stand and Deliver and WWE WrestleMania 41. Chances are those are going to come Tuesday and Wednesday on our second look episodes, so this coming week. But nevertheless, we read all of your questions and all of your comments. We do the best we can to integrate you into the show. Speaking of that, we are posting pre- and post-show polls on Twitter, as mentioned, at Getting Overcast around every WWE Premium Live event. We take your votes, we factor them into our analysis and our final grades. So it is immensely important that you follow us and that you vote when we post those. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
Hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every show, exclusive news analysis posts every week. But really, you're financially supporting the continuation of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. So hit up buymeacoffee.com/gettingover and sign up. Now, because this is a special instant analysis episode, only on these shows we do this. The Silver King and Vintage, we're cracking open a cold one. And the Silver King has Cali Creamin' from Mother Earth Brewing somewhere out in California. And this is the creamsicle flavor. One of my favorite beers of all time. This is actually over a year old. I was saving a couple in the refrigerator. I figured WrestleMania 41, a perfect time to open it up, especially given it's a West Coast show. Vintage, welcome to the program. What do you got over there?
I've got a beer. I'm having trouble opening the can right now, actually.
Going into business for itself.
A watermelon sucker punch from Three Nations Brewery here in DFW. I've had this one in the past. Mm-hmm. It's one of my favorites. One with a oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, we're both with the fruity beers a little bit tonight, but nevertheless, tasty. I when I drink beers on the show, I can't drink a stout or like a really heavy IPA. I got to have something that's refreshing and enjoyable because we're talking. We're trying to converse and keep our energy up. So I'm not going to go drink something heavy. But yes, we like IPAs and pale ales and all that other good stuff. Really, when we get this show fully on video on YouTube, we got to get a beer sponsorship for these instant analysis. I don't mind hawking some special craft brewery that pays us to do it, right? But for now, we get to choose our beer, and that's what Silver King and Vintage are drinking. And we also love knowing that some of you do the same. You crack open a cold one when you listen to the instant analysis. If you tweet us or email us or whatever, pictures of the beers you're drinking or just tell us what you're drinking, it's always pretty cool to find out. But that's just something special we do for the instant analysis. The other special thing, Chris, we do for the instant analysis is, break down the entirety of a premium live event. And in this case, it is WWE WrestleMania 41. So let's not waste any further time getting into it other than me reminding you we're going to be right back here on Sunday night with a Night 2 instant analysis for WrestleMania 41. And already in the podcast feed, there's a great chance you missed it. We have our NXT Stand and Deliver instant analysis from earlier Saturday. So make sure you listen to both of those. Now, as we get into breaking down WWE WrestleMania 41, a couple topics that we probably should just address tonight. That way we don't have to do it for night 2. The WrestleMania stage, Chris, I thought was gorgeous. I loved how the doors opened underneath. The AR graphics of playing cards for the wrestlers, they worked really, really well. One thing I disliked greatly is there was not a physical light up WrestleMania sign. It was only digital on the stage marquee. And there was also a massively missed opportunity to do something fun, like a physical slot machine or roulette wheel or something Las Vegas. You remember we got the roller coaster at WrestleMania 33. I know this was indoors. Maybe the build out was limited, but that stage looked enormous. It was super eye-catching nonetheless. Also notable about the stage, there were actually seats on it. There are 2 levels. I presume for VIPs and celebrities and stuff. I guess they were actually sold. And if so, this goes right into that TKO monetization deal that we discussed on our bonus WWE episode on Friday. I got to wonder the price point of those seats, how one would go about getting them. There's got to be some precautions. They were shooting pyro up from behind some of those people. They didn't even show anyone sitting there, which I thought was odd because there were a lot of folks up there. So it was a gorgeous set, one of the better ones recently, but still at the same time left something to be desired.
It's okay. It's pretty good. They're always able to do better indoors than outdoors, typically. Obviously, last year's I think was a bit of a letdown outside, but it looks it looked too similar to WrestleMania 39 in LA for me, and the LA one was just better.
It was better in every way. Yeah.
So I think it was just a less good version of that. The fans on the stage, at first I hated it. The more I looked, I was like, I don't really care. It's not that big of a deal. I think there's just nothing that was like super memorable about it. I thought the some of the things they did with doors coming down and stuff looked pretty cool, but it was all just kind of a screen. So it was solid, but not one I'm gonna like remember, I think is the way I would put it. Like I even remember 38 in Dallas when I was there. It's just a giant star, like you remember that one. So I don't think it's that.
Well, yeah, the memorable ones though are really few and far between. It's 33 with the roller coaster in Orlando. It's the Dallas Star. The New Orleans one was
triple X's.
Yeah, the triple X one was good. The New Orleans one was incredible. I think that's maybe the greatest set, and it's massively 34. Underrated. People don't talk about it. 34 was ridiculously nice. I also think like there's a standout worst set of all time, which was WrestleMania 35 in New York, New Jersey, in that stadium, MetLife Stadium. Horrendous. Yeah. I saw it live. It was worse than it looked on television, I promise you. But I don't know. I liked this. What I thought was pretty funny is they put all those people on the stage, right? Those seats were way, way worse in terms of like viewing the matches than most others in the stadium.
Probably, yeah. And one other thing, I think you said the playing cards, the AR. I thought those were real.
I think it's both.
The pictures of the different wrestlers that would change throughout.
Yeah, I think some of them were real, and some of them that like looked like they were touching the stage, the ramp, were AR. So I think it was a mix of LED boards and AR. I could be wrong about that though.
Yeah, anybody who's there, let us know exactly what it looked like in person. Because there were the ones up top, I think were real. I don't know, but it was used in some really cool ways. I thought it was a great idea just to kind of have them rotate. And then when Roman does his entrance, you see all the members of the family.
Yeah.
That was a really cool way to go about that. So I thought everything they had was solid. I'm just probably not going to remember it,
Right. No, that's totally fair. I know everyone wants us to get into all the matches. Just a couple quick notes, I promise. The opening for night one featured Dana White doing a video essay about Las Vegas, which, like, come on. All the legends and celebrities to choose from in Vegas, you're going with that douchebag? Yeah. Luckily, his scumbag wife-beating ass got heavily booed twice during the show. They showed him. I don't know why. They showed him once. I don't know why they showed him twice, but he got booed. Jelly Roll saying God Bless America did a fine job, a little repetitive, given we just saw him recently, and he like sped through it. I've never heard a faster version of that song. Triple H then voiced over the intro package and appeared in the ring to start the show. But the first entrance after he did his like welcome to WrestleMania, it was not a WWE superstar. Why would it be? It's only WrestleMania. The immense monetization was felt right off the bat with I was honestly distracted, a DJ who's featured in a video game or something like that. And that guy entered before Jey Uso, who's the entrance right now in WWE. It was absurd. And then before the match even began, we got a Slim Jim sponsorship, a Saudi Arabia shout out, and we saw the head of Fanatics right behind commentary for like 10 full minutes. The first 15 minutes of WrestleMania were two promotions, a shout out to Saudi Arabia, and that guy, I think his name's Michael Rubin from Fanatics. It was such a turnoff at the start of this show.
Yeah, the Fatal Fury video game thing, they were also the ring mat sponsor, at least for some of the show. I didn't know what that was. My brother knows what it is.
I still don't.
He's a big video.
Yeah,
he's a big video game, but they did not make it clear what that was.
No,
they put up a QR code, and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah, and here's a DJ, and people know that guy. I'm not trying to act like he wasn't a known person. Apparently, he was, but to a wrestling audience, when you're waiting for Jey Uso to come out, that's the first thing you do? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like it, and then two, I didn't know what it was, and they didn't do a good job of explaining. Are we promoting the DJ? Are we promoting this video game? I don't know.
Exactly.
The one thing I'll say about the commercials and all the advertising, and part of that's because they have the ad-based Peacock. Samoa Joe made WrestleMania because he's in the trailer for Twisted Metal Season 2 on Peacock.
That's a good show, by the way. It's definitely worth watching. Very enjoyable. Combining every turnbuckle and mat spot, just so everyone knows, there were 18 advertising spots just in the ring. That's not counting the barricade or anything else that was packed. And I forgot upon the show starting, Chris, that Allegiant Stadium, it allows natural light despite being covered. So it was a bit surprising to me to have the World Heavyweight Championship open the show when you would ideally want all the yeeting to happen under the lights with fans all lit up. I was actually surprised they didn't save it for later, specifically because of that. If it co-main evented, I think it would have looked a lot better. And I say this every single time there's a WrestleMania on the West Coast. I hate major stadium shows completely existing during the daytime. There is something about darkness and stadium or arena lights that adds gravity to an event. When you're watching wrestling and it looks like you could be simultaneously eating brunch, it just doesn't hit the same. And I do legitimately believe, whether you loved or liked or disliked the majority of this show, the atmosphere had a lot to do with the perception of it not always feeling like a WrestleMania.
I completely agree. The daylight, it just doesn't create the same amount of energy. And we know this as people who cover college football.
Mm-hmm.
Big Ten fans hate the big noon kickoff games on Fox. They want night games because it's naturally more energetic. And I do think that created the slow start to the show from the crowd. Because it wasn't it wasn't energetic. I wouldn't have opened the show with Jay
Definitely
Luther
not.
because of that. And we'll get into the matches, obviously. Also had a friend, Antonio, my colleague, who was there. He also said that the lights were shooting at the fans again. Like it's a problem every single year.
It's always
every single year it's a problem, and fans have to chant to turn the lights off, and they finally do. And then again, this was during the daylight. This was during the first match.
That's the thing.
He sent me the picture, and fans are having to chant to turn a light off because it's in their face. So
it's like WWE is so into the presentation of all this. They have all those lights and the graphics and stuff. It doesn't look good during the day compared to at night. And, you know, I guess Allegiant Stadium, probably there was no option. I don't think they have a shade that they could draw. But if they could have, they absolutely should have. And I got to say, man, that needs to be taken into consideration when WrestleMania sites are booked. It's going to be in New Orleans next year. It's not going to be a problem. The Superdome is completely indoors, and this won't be an issue. But I legitimately hate, and it has nothing to do with the people or the states or anything, I hate West Coast stadium shows, period. They should not do them. Even when they do stadium shows overseas, remember AEW All In at Wembley Stadium, it was light for like nearly the entire show, and it just didn't look as good. It didn't feel as big as it otherwise could have. And that was definitely the case at WrestleMania.
Sometimes I like the uniqueness of it, but especially for like a world title match, I don't want that in there.
I like it, Chris, when it's like a couple hours and then it becomes night, like at the middle point of the show. I'm not saying I like it. I'm okay with it when that's the case. But
it's why 3:30 is the best kickoff for college football.
Right, because late in the second half, it's nighttime and you get a totally different feel, and it's when the game is picking up pace. But yeah, I mean, when the whole show is like that, it is immensely frustrating. And you even felt it here because the main event, which is what we're going to talk about right now, it was either in darkness or the sun was set and it was much darker. And sure, the gravitas of the people involved and the match and the importance of it, that played too. But the atmosphere was absolutely affected by the light. No question about it. So that was our prelude. Let's fully get in, Chris, to the WWE WrestleMania 41 instant analysis. As mentioned, we're going to break down every single match, what happened in and around the ring. We'll also, by the way, be discussing any go-home moments from SmackDown or the lead into WrestleMania. We'll break down the match. We'll give you some analysis, our highlights, our thoughts, our grades at the end, and then we'll move over to the next one. We're not going to immediately go in reverse order on the card, but we almost always start with the main event, which is exactly what we're going to do right now. Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, a triple threat match with Paul Heyman coming down to the ring with CM Punk. Now, before we get to what happened on WrestleMania, on the Pat McAfee show, Reigns said his goal in the triple threat was to regain power in WWE, pick up a win that puts him on the road to becoming champion again. CM Punk, in an interview with ESPN, said it was an unspoken thing, but given the star power in the match, the winner is probably going to be a number one contender. My question, Chris, why didn't Roman say this at any point during the actual build to the match? Why did we have to infer that? And with what Punk said, why didn't WWE make that a spoken thing if that would indeed be true? Why dance around a number one contendership? It felt like they did more building the stakes of this match off TV over the last few days than the entirety of the build combined.
I agree. And it goes into the video package for the match, which I didn't love because there wasn't a clear through line. I didn't know what the stakes were, what the story was. And yeah, everything they said was great. I wish they would. I wish that had been spoken, not unspoken, and been spoken on WWE television.
You may be the only person who watched WrestleMania that did not think that video package was phenomenal. It was.
I don't know why. I thought I would. It's the type of music I like. It's everything I would normally like. It just didn't for whatever reason.
I thought it was exceptionally strong. Sure, perhaps there could have been a little bit more storyline that would have aided some of the back and forth clips, but man, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. So let's move to SmackDown. Rollins opened SmackDown dressed like a Liberace-designed black and white cookie. After getting serenaded, fans alternated chanting for his competitors. He sat pipe bomb style, removed the mic flag. Rollins said Punk came back to wrestling, not to WWE at first, and ultimately to neither company because fans chanted his name, but rather because both companies wrote him big fat checks. Fans chanted big fat check. So Rollins replied, "Tell me when I'm telling lies." He then said Reigns doesn't care about the fans or WWE either, not with his limited schedule and such. He told this story of Paul Heyman bringing them and Dean Ambrose into WWE as a shield for Punk, but from that day, it was all about Reigns. Unlike them, Rollins has been all about sacrifice for the last decade, including at WrestleMania last year when he was a shield to ensure Rollins lost, even as his stepfather was dying of cancer. We did not know that previously. That was new information. Rollins promised to lay it all on the line, sacrifice everything to make sure the industry moves forward in the right direction. He closed with Paul Heyman's "That's not a prediction, it's a spoiler" line. Rollins may not be just the most complete, but the most important wrestler in WWE right now. He carries feuds, he does jobs, he debuts championships. He's the definition of a five-tool player. This promo on Friday night, Chris, was phenomenal, bringing the feud full circle on the go-home show. It was pitch perfect, it added gravity and stakes to the fight, and it placed him firmly as the most motivated and focused person in the entire match. I straight up loved it, and it had me wondering why the hell he didn't do this weeks ago with then Punk and Reigns cutting similar promos from their perspective as the feud built. Many probably would have felt much different about this feud if this had been done a little bit earlier, but I was sure as hell glad he did it Friday night.
It was really good, and it, coupled with what happened on Raw, further had me believe he wouldn't win the match, even though he should.
Right, and one also could have taken this as like a farewell promo to being a babyface, just given the way he spoke. It was not lost on me that over the last few weeks, he had been dressing as far out versions of the Shield character that he used to be, and like versions of The Rock as well, that he'd wear a black turtleneck. It was a lot of heel references by Rollins over the ensuing weeks. But let's go ahead and get to WrestleMania. Rollins came out looking like he was wearing a garbage bag with a hoodie as a robe. He had a flamethrower that didn't really do anything. I was trying to figure out if that was like meant to mock The Rock or just because they were playing into the burn it down gimmick. But then the screen cut to black and he appeared in all white looking eons better. Case Bartley at C. Bartley Rivals, he's a basketball columnist over there, he DM'd us. He said Rollins' glasses resembled Jesus' crown of thorns, and going from black to all white was basically an Easter cue, like he's the savior, he's the Messiah. I never would have gotten that, so shout out for the detail. I wound up thinking it was much cooler than I initially did, just because I'm not really religious or anything, and I don't know about that kind of stuff. Reigns arrived already wearing the Ula Fala. His physical entrance didn't include anything special, but there were LED and or AR banners of his entire Samoan dynasty basically draping him as he walked to the ring. It was really touching, especially when you consider his father and uncle had just passed, and he was also wearing black with white accents, so he was the inverse of Rollins here. Punk got the most unique entrance by far. He had an entire promo package where he recited the same lines his younger self did. There were clips from OVW onward. It was straight up exceptional by the WWE production team, and it used The Fire Burns, his original theme. Legitimately awesome. An all-time package. Hall of Fame induction worthy. And then Living Color shows up on stage. Michael Cole called them In Living Color. Sorry, Cole. That's a TV show. This is a band called Living Color. They played Cult of Personality live on the stage. The way Punk reacted to this, hanging with the band members, Heyman there using his watch for its clobbering time. I'm not saying it was among the greatest WrestleMania entrances, Chris, but I had a massive smile on my face the entire time. I freaking loved it. It's definitely going to be replayed many times by myself. I'm sure thousands of others. Punk, by the way, was wearing the exact same boots from the pipe bomb on Raw, which was a really nice touch. No matter any of our thoughts coming into the show, this absolutely positively felt like a WrestleMania main event that mattered a great deal. The entire tone of the show changed, not just because of their star power, the presentation, and the storyline. There was a gravity, everything that built up to it. It was the best set of entrances together I can remember in a long, long time. And by the time this bell rang, you felt like, holy shit, I cannot wait to see what happens here.
Yeah, that Punk video was 12 out of 10. Fantastic. Like all the little callbacks, the attentions to detail that reward you for watching and for watching CM Punk for so long. It calls back to all that stuff. So that was fantastic. Actually, the second time Living Color has done Punk's entrance, because they also did WrestleMania 29 when he fought The Undertaker. Yep. So, and he lost that match, obviously.
He did.
So really good stuff. Awesome. Had me fired up and ready to go.
All right, so let's get to the match. At the bell, Punk rolled out of the ring to get Heyman's advice. Basically, he was mocking Reigns. Rollins suggested that he and Roman work together, but Roman just went right at him instead. Punk and Rollins quickly went into the crowd. Punk used a commemorative chair. Rollins used a stanchion and a trash can. Reigns said enough. He did a full send splash, just murking them, fully leaping over the barricade. Reigns and Punk combined for a doomsday device on Rollins, only for Punk to eat a Superman punch immediately. Punk later locked in Anaconda Vice deep, only for Rollins to break it with a frog splash. He added buckle bombs to both guys, dodged a spear that nailed Punk. Rollins caught a spear with his knees for a pedigree, which was the spot of the match, one of the top 2 or 3 spots of the entire night. He followed with a stomp, pushed Punk out of the ring for a false finish. Exceptional. Rollins crossed himself, like literally, trying a Phoenix Splash, missed it as he always does. One day this dude needs to land that move, by the way. Punk this time avoided a spear, and Rollins took it. Then he hit Reigns with GTS for a false finish. Rollins nailed Punk with a pedigree and screamed at Reigns that he doesn't have him, Heyman, Mox, his bloodline, or anyone. He actually said Mox, which was cool. He again tried to get Roman to team up with him, reminding that Punk is the outsider, and if they put him down, it's all over. Reigns nodded, and he was understandably hesitant to actually team up. And then, while he's kind of walking around the ring, he snaps, and he looks ready to do the Shield powerbomb and team with Rollins again. Instead, he just punches Seth in the face and then does the powerbomb to Punk himself. The new announce table finally broke. It was not the same one they used for TV, but it did break. Reigns then did the same to Rollins on the other announce table, a Spanish one. Roman ran through Seth with the spear in the ring for a 2.99 false finish. Roman snapped again, this time about the favor. He put Punk in the guillotine choke while staring at Heyman. Punk broke it by flipping over, moved into the vice again. Rollins broke that with a sharpshooter on Punk, flicked them off, and Peacock or Netflix or WWE, they had the gall to flick the screen to black for a second because, oh my God, someone put a middle finger in a main event at 10:45 p.m., 11 o'clock, whatever time. Stupid.
It's not like this. It's not like one of the most popular wrestlers of all time was known for giving the middle finger, and they showed it all the time.
Who they honored on the show, by the way. So Reigns eventually broke that sharpshooter with a guillotine on Rollins, flipped him over for a really sick, perfect plex. Roman kept the guillotine locked in, though. Punk broke that with the stomp on Reigns and a GTS on Rollins for another false finish. That one briefly got me, just because the guillotine preceded. I was like, oh, maybe that's the finish of the match. Rollins took another GTS, but he bounced off the ropes for a stomp on Reigns, who had, in the 1 second that existed between those two moves, hit Punk with a short-range spear. Heyman grabbed a chair, looking between Reigns and Punk, who both noticed, and basically begged him to give it to them with their eyes. Heyman slid it to Punk, but he entered the ring, and then he low-blowed him when he lifted it. He cried and screamed, "You made me choose," as Reigns grinned and laughed in the other corner. Heyman then handed him the chair on his knees, like the wise man would. Roman wore out Punk with the chair, so Heyman pointed out that Rollins had his back turned, and Reigns could get that Shield retribution with a chair shot to the back. And when Reigns went for it, Heyman low-blowed Roman. The crowd exploded, and then they switched between booing and serenading Rollins, who took the chair as Heyman sat in the corner, proud of himself with a shit-eating grin on his face. Rollins drilled Reigns in the back with the chair, another allusion to the Shield heel turn, and then hit the stomp for the 1-2-3 in the main event of WrestleMania, pinning Reigns in such a spot for the second time in his career. Cameras lingered on all four of them for a long time. Reigns and Punk were in shock, totally shell-shocked, utter disbelief at what happened. Rollins and Heyman, big grins on their faces, shaking hands, and then you saw a really great shot of Heyman having his typical evil grin over Rollins' shoulder. Punk later refused comment backstage, and my thought was, my lord, Roman's character badly needs a therapist. Like, talk about DTA. This guy needs to be in therapy for 10, 15, 20 years. But my real thought after the aftermath of this match, Chris, was, by God, they did it. They effing did it. Truly incredible. I said it on the Ultimate Preview. It was not my prediction, but I said clearly the absolute best possible booking for this match would be Rollins turning heel with Heyman as his advocate and winning. And they fully delivered that. Even better than expectation the way it played out. An instant classic WrestleMania match with an instant classic angle executed to perfection. An angle and a moment that will reverberate for as long as those three guys remain involved in the industry, and likely even beyond that. One that will be emulated in the future and referred to for years, if not decades. The match itself was phenomenal. All three of them wrestled to the height of their abilities. The catch pedigree spot was incredible. The finisher sequences, the smoothness of their work together, it made it look like they practiced this match at house shows for 3 months leading into Mania. Obviously, we know that was not the case, which makes it all the more spectacular. Then consider Punk's age and the way he was able to go here. We know Rollins and Reigns, they're wrestling soulmates, factoring Punk into their business and it not dropping off even one iota. That was immense. As much as we could speak about the match and all the incredible parts, this was all about storytelling. The closing spots with Rollins covering Reigns identically to the way he did it in the Heist of the Century at WrestleMania 31, kneeling over Roman's body like a messiah, amazing. It felt like Rollins gave Reigns 2 separate opportunities to align and put the industry over his selfish pursuits at the beginning and then in the Shield powerbomb spot. After both were declined by Roman with prejudice, Rollins and Heyman, they had no other choice. I would not be surprised if that's specifically stated in the ensuing weeks and months. Nearly 11 years after turning on Reigns and siding with the Authority, Rollins is now linking with Heyman, who simultaneously turned on his best friend and the man who saved his career, all to save wrestling from both of them. White gear, blonde streak, the whole shebang for Rollins, the most deserving person, both in kayfabe and reality, to win the match, won the match. As I said on the Ultimate Preview, Rollins getting his time in the sun after being the linchpin that connected everything for WrestleMania 40. 2 title matches, the night 1 main event, all with a bad back and knee. He got all his flowers and then some on Saturday night in Las Vegas. And unplanned, unintentional, the crowd serenading Rollins as the heel turn transpired. You could not script that if you tried. That made it legitimately cinematic. It completely added to the scene for an architect, a messiah, and a wise man, maybe an apostle now, right? It was phenomenal. Hanging in the Louvre, call up Marty Scorsese. That was indeed cinema. I could go for another 15 minutes unabated, Chris. Let me give my grade and get you in before I go deeper. 5 stars plus, A++, match of the year contender, moment of the year contender, all of it.
Wow.
Maybe one of the greatest top 10, let's say, as of right now, WrestleMania matches of all time. Talk to me about this match. Talk to me about the storyline.
Well, now I'm going to sound like a hater because I think it was really good, but not that good.
Oh,
So, like, first off, in hindsight, the Heyman turn, I mean, not even in hindsight, we all talked about it.
Mhm.
It was pretty telegraphed.
Sure.
With Rollins saying you owe me a favor, and it's not it's a spoiler, as he said on SmackDown. It was all laid out. Like we said, I picked Rollins to win, but my biggest concern was that it was too telegraphed.
Mhm.
That he was standing tall, going home on Raw and SmackDown, and yet they still did it. So he got everything. He got the go home and he got the match. Which is good.
Everything. Yeah.
You need to subvert our expectations when that type of stuff happens. So that was really good. I want to shout out listener Jesse McKenna, I think. He DM'd me Monday and said, will there ever be a table spot again on these reinforced tables? You know, they're not the simple foldable tables they used to have. And so we were just chatting about it in the DMs, and we got it. We got 2 of them. And so now we know what it takes. And I got to say, both of those tables exploding the way they did look great. So I don't know if these tables were different for Mania than they've been on Raw or SmackDown. I didn't look at it specifically, but it was going to take some more effort to make these 2 go down. And they both did. And they both looked great. And so that is a positive. The second half of the match was good, but it became just finisher for like a good 5+ minutes there. MVP of the match was obviously Rollins, but the reason is because he had the best kickouts you'll see in wrestling. He had several 2.99s that for a split second had me think the match was over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what you want to have in these types of matches. That 0.2 seconds of a kick out difference makes a world of difference. It makes every near finish that much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole point of wrestling, to suck you in and then, oh, it's not. They're kicking out. He was great at that in these matches. The Heyman stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It got too telegraphed. The second Paul got in the ring, you're like, well, something's happening here.
Well,
why are you
course.
getting in the ring? Like, I understand the chair thing, but then he just gets in the ring like, well, something weird's gonna happen. I don't know how they could have done it, and they kind of tried to because he was like angled behind Punk, but it would have been good to if we had not seen Heyman in the ring.
Let me just say one thing about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Paul is not, and respectfully, okay, he's not a guy who can slide in and out of the ring easily, right? So
no, but they had that camera view from.
No, I know.
From
he
behind
gave him the
Punk.
chair and he immediately climbed right on the same camera view. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah,
But-
like if you just kind of moved, you could have him get in without. I don't know.
I'm just saying to do what they wanted to do with him, and it's no disrespect because I'm certainly not a guy who's going to be able to slide in and out of the ring myself either. It would be difficult to do that with him.
No, but and then he's like saying things to Punk and stuff like that before he. It's like it would have been better if Punk didn't know he was there.
Man, it really feels like you're nitpicking here. I got to be honest with you.
I am.
Yeah.
I am. But you knew, and then what happens, and then the second that Roman moves Heyman to the side, which he had to because that's the way he was going to swing.
Right.
But the second he does that, everybody in the crowd goes, "Oh!" I think everybody knew what he was about to do.
That's what you
In
want.
that moment. Yeah, and so it all happens. And again, this is nitpicky, but I went back and watched it again because I want to make sure it wasn't just me feeling it in the moment. That whole end, really dragged on. Everything from the chair and this and that. A lot of times, Triple H really emphasizes, because Triple H used to do this a lot, like him and Sting and all these things. Like, you do it and you hold it for so long before you move on to the next one. and it was an issue with the John Cena heel turn, and then it was an issue here where it became so obvious what was going to happen because it was like dragging out for so long. It kind of takes away a little bit of that surprise. It's nitpicking. This is really, really great, to be clear. I'm just a couple of things in that moment. I was like, man, if that just happened a little bit quicker, it would have been it would have actually surprised me. But because we're wrestling fans who talk about this stuff, it didn't really like completely surprise me in the moment.
I don't know. I mean, we're pretty critical on this show, like fairly. I'm
not trying to be like overly critical.
I feel like I know you're not trying to purposefully, because we don't do that. We haven't done it for 5 years on the show, so I don't think of you that way. But it feels like you going into this WrestleMania had not been as enthusiastic as you wanted to be, and therefore you might be perhaps subconsciously finding more holes or complaining about things a little bit, or not complaining, criticizing things perhaps a little bit more than you otherwise would. Because what you're saying is not untrue, but nothing is ever going to be shot for shot, pitch perfect. Like in wrestling, when you're working live like this and you're not on a stage play, or it's not, a film or a piece of cinema,
right?
It's not going to be perfect, right? Like
in much with the build, though, I'm not saying like this is garbage, this sucks.
No, I know.
It doesn't suck, it's not garbage. It's literally just like a couple of little things which are absolutely.
But my issue is, here's my issue.
I think would have made these things 10 out of 10.
My issue is that, and again, I don't want this to sound like I'm coming down on you, because I'm really not. But like, this is how you're starting off your analysis of it.
No, I started
as opposed
off
to
by
like
talking about how Punk's intro was amazing, 12 out of 10. The WWE.
That's the intro, though.
Talked about Seth Rollins kickouts being unbelievable. I have said many good things about this. This was fantastic.
I know. It just feels like you went real quick to the criticism.
I just don't want to go back and forth saying, hey, isn't this amazing? Isn't this amazing? A couple of things at the end, but that's it. It was great. I'm giving this like a 4.5 out of 5. I just wouldn't say match of the year contender, moment of the year contender for sure. But this was great. It was really well done. A fitting main event. It didn't feel like a WrestleMania main event going into WrestleMania. It did when it got started, and it did throughout, and it lived up to what it needed to be.
I think the best point that you made was about like finisher spam a little bit. The reason why it didn't feel that way for me, because normally you'd be right about that. They incorporated the submissions in there. And in WWE, this is a conversation we've had so many times on this podcast. They just don't do submissions anymore, especially their stars. And all three of them...
We're going to talk about that later.
Oh, we are. We sure are. But all three of them use submissions, and we have seen Reigns win titles with the guillotine choke. We've seen CM Punk, I think, win titles and win major matches with the Anaconda Vice before. Rollins and the Sharpshooter, not really anything. He really needs his own like special submission. I've always thought that. But they utilize those. And even though, yes, Reigns and Punk were like GTS Spear, Superman Punch, mostly between them, Rollins was breaking out, a Phoenix Splash attempt, a perfect plex, counters. Like, he was doing everything. Now, he has a greater repertoire of moves, so that's why he's kind of relied on a little bit more to do all of that. But because that was integrated within everything else we were talking about, or that happened in the match, that's why I didn't feel finisher spam like you did. But I do acknowledge that, especially towards the end in some of those sequences, like when it was GTS Spear Stomp, like 1, 2, 3 in that one sequence, then yeah, it was a lot of finishers and it was a lot of kickouts. But
that's the nature of a triple threat match. You finish her and throw somebody out of the ring, like that happens.
But also, it's wrestling in 2025, and like there's one thing to do a couple finishers and kickouts, and then there's situations where it becomes gratuitous, and we've seen that before, like Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano, right? It was an incredible match, but it was like 6 false finishes more than it needed to be. This, I never actually got that feeling. What I loved so much about this is how everything fit together. We spent so much time talking about the stakes and Heyman being the centerpiece and Rollins not focusing heavy on saving the industry stuff until the end. Even on the show, we just talked about it. Punk and Reigns not talking about the number 1 contendership, blah, blah, blah. Now I completely understand why the feud was booked the way it was booked. That does not mean that the creative on the road to WrestleMania could not have been better. It absolutely could have been. But we are not stubborn on this podcast. We offer our fair opinions and critiques as we see it, but we're willing to give credit where it's due in retrospect. Rollins being the centerpiece of this feud, which we spoke about on the Ultimate Preview and our final podcast this week, referring to him after the go-home show I did on SmackDown as the most complete and important wrestler in WWE, someone who carried this feud and brought it full circle on Friday night. That all came true. You predicted Rollins would win. I took Punk, but I said Rollins winning was the right and necessary booking, and the Heyman alignment would be the best possible move. It's funny that the one time I go with my brain and not my heart, I get it wrong on the record. Nevertheless, I believe I mentioned how Rollins could win this as a heel, then soon after take the title from Jey Uso, cementing the fan hate for him by stripping their favorite. It would work so well, especially since Jey is Roman's family. There is so far they can go with this. It starts with Heyman realizing Punk made him go against his tribal chief, Reigns not understanding and questioning Heyman's loyalty, finally realizing Rollins was his only way out. Heyman I'm talking about, the only person who actually thinks the same way he does. The Rollins and Punk hate, that's going to continue unabated. Though really, Punk's issue should be with Heyman, his best friend. Rollins always hated Punk. Reigns and Rollins, that perfectly sets up. We talked about this as well for WrestleMania 42, possibly with the title on the line, night 2 main event. There are so many avenues now to get there. And the alignment of Rollins and Heyman, it's so immensely unique because like Punk before him, Seth doesn't need Paul to speak. You could even throw Becky Lynch into this if you wanted to go crazy and do an epic like 2-man power trip, like 2-man couple power trip with Heyman as the, like I said, apostle or advocate for them. That could be something really special. But this creates so many opportunities. And we always talk about when we come out of a premium live event or WrestleMania, SummerSlam, whatever the case, if we're talking about, oh my God, what's going to come next, then they have done their job. And that is exactly the conversation that we're having coming out of night 1 of WrestleMania.
We said going in, I specifically said, why is this so much about Paul Heyman and not about these guys? Mm-hmm. Well, this is why. Because this is what was going to happen. Because it was all about Paul Heyman in the end. We also said, this isn't the end of a story. We thought much of this Mania, and specifically this main event, was going to be about setting the stage for the rest of the year. And that's what it was. And that works as a night 1 main event too. And there's a lot of different ways you can go with a lot of this. So that all sets up really well. One other thing though, you keep saying, did Rollins actually turn heel? Because
absolutely.
All the points he made were correct. And he's already hated these guys anyway for understandable reasons. And having this happen to beat Punk or Roman is not out of character. Paul Heyman turned, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But Rollins is going to continue to get serenaded and cheered and all these types of things. They're not going to boo him when he shows up on Monday Night Raw.
They should
even probably again the World Heavyweight Champion. So it's going to be interesting how that goes.
Well, don't forget, even when Roman Reigns was a heel, fans would acknowledge him and then they'd boo him, the stuff that he says. Yeah. So I think it's going to be the same thing. He's going to get serenaded and he's going to be there with his shit-eating grin and all that, and Heyman's going to be laughing. And he's going to start cutting a promo on Punk, and then he's going to get booed. So is he a heel to me? No. He's a babyface, just like Drew McIntyre is a babyface. Like, we've had these conversations, and it's one of the most intriguing parts of WWE booking in 2024 and 2025 is that these guys come out and they tell the truth, and their perspectives are just. And Reigns, in particular, has never done anything to actually be a babyface. He just hasn't. Punk's a face. That's fair to say. But Reigns is a heel. So Rollins, did he really do anything wrong? No. Heyman's the one who turned heel, to your point. You're 1,000% correct about that. But he's aligning with Rollins. Rollins is the one who accepted Heyman's help. And therefore, that does theoretically make him a heel. But he's going to have justification for it on Monday night, no question.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how that goes moving forward.
Couple important notes coming out of this, and then we'll move on to the rest of the matches. This, Chris, may have marked, we don't know, but it may have marked the end of the Bloodline storyline, the greatest in professional wrestling history. It seems plausible. If so, it lasted 4 years and 8 months, exactly 1,700 days from when Reigns returned at SummerSlam 2020. From Wreck Everyone and Leave, that gimmick, with Heyman on the couch backstage at SmackDown, to a low blow in the main event, night 1 of WrestleMania 41. 1,700 days. Now, it's possible Reigns gets back with the Usos and the Bloodline reforms, but Heyman's not part of it. Very possible that it's a new chapter coming up. But Reigns and Heyman have been together this entire time. That is now over. And it's the first time in that period that that's happened. I find that immensely interesting. And if it is the conclusion of that storyline, what a storyline it was.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see Roman coming out with nobody, coming out alone. We haven't seen that in a very, very long time. So we've called it the greatest storyline in wrestling history. I think it's a fitting way, and fitting for multiple reasons we'll get to later in the show too. But Cody and people had said to him, Roman, you're going to lose everything.
Yeah.
And now he has.
Tribal chief without a tribe, and so on and so forth. We discussed that on the Ultimate Preview and some other points on this show over the last couple of weeks. Now, look, I just mentioned how Reigns never atoned for the sins with his family. If they are going to continue this bloodline arc, this should be the impetus for that to happen. Now he actually has a reason to change his ways and regroup with his actual family. I'm sure he'll be out for months at this juncture. Well, maybe he returns to SummerSlam. Hold on. But it would make so much sense as an arc for him if the storyline is going to continue, because now he doesn't have Heyman, and the only people he can turn to are the Usos and other people in his family.
Well, this was the problem with War Games, is that they already teamed up, and he kind of sort of apologized to Jay, but not
no, he didn't. He didn't though. You're right that they teamed up because they said blood's thicker than water, but it wasn't. They weren't really together, and they're still not together. Today,
right? But this is why I understand we can't. We no need to go back through it, but they didn't fully bring them back together for War Games when they should have.
Right,
and here we are.
Unless there's a reason for that, because now they're going to. That's kind of what I'm pointing out. Maybe there's a reason why that happened the way it did after all. And maybe we're about to find out why. Or maybe not. I just wanted to point that out. There was a beautiful moment after this match was over. Punk was standing by himself in the ring, looking at the crowd, the WrestleMania sign, and you could see him mouth to himself, I effing did it, meaning he finally main evented WrestleMania. He sure did. And he legitimately deserved it. A decade ago, he deserved it. But even now in 2025, he got his WrestleMania main event. It was fantastic. He looked great throughout. He got the entrance that he deserved. Heyman was by his side, and it ended up being an epic finish to the match and an epic storyline.
Yep, he was the champion at WrestleMania 28 in Miami. Didn't get to main event because it was Rock Cena. He should have main evented in 29. It should have been him and Rock and Cena triple threat and that type of stuff. So call it night one, night two, whatever you want to say. He closed a night of WrestleMania and got to stand there in the ring as the show was over. And that's really cool. He deserved it.
And he was also the final entrance on WrestleMania, which is really cool as well.
Yes.
I wanted to spend... Say yes again.
Yes.
I wanted to send a special shout out to Pittman Strike at Pittman Strike. I didn't even realize this. He DM'd us while we were taping the show, just while we were talking right now. He wanted to celebrate. And you ask, why would this random Twitter user want to celebrate? He predicted this finish on March 30th. 3 weeks ago. He nailed it. He DM'd us on it. Didn't see it. Never read it on the show. My bad. Shout out to you, playa. That's some foresight, Pittman Strike. Thank you for listening to the show. And credit to you for predicting this 3 freaking weeks ago. Chris, let's move off this match to what opened night one of WrestleMania 41. The World Heavyweight Championship, Gunther against Jey Uso. Las Vegas Raiders, cheerleaders, people waving flags, dancers, the whole 9 yards. Smart move by Jey, reserving his energy in his entrance, not getting blown up by keeping the yeeting to a minimum. We've seen the opposite happen for him ahead of matches and segments on television. The crowd was insanely hot for him. Jey got the life chopped out of him. He fell off the top rope. He caught Gunther with a spear as an early counter for a false finish. Gunther similarly got one on a powerbomb stack. Jey came back with countering a powerbomb using a hurricanrana, hit a spear, Uso splash, another false finish. Gunther took his title, preparing to leave. The referee argued with him. Jey took that opportunity to try a tope suicida, but the referee moved out of the way. Gunther drilled Jey in the head with the title. Then he had a splash coming back for a real false finish. Then he locked in the sleeper hold for an eventual rope break. Gunther maintained wrist control. They exchanged chops, punches, boots, and lariats in a really nice sequence. Jey countered a sleeper into a German suplex, but Gunther hit a shotgun dropkick. Jey fully reversed a powerbomb, continuing to use Gunther's moves against him. A spear, and not one, not two, but 3 Uso splashes followed without any covers. Instead, Jey locked in Gunther's own sleeper, and Gunther straight up submitted in like 5 seconds as Jey won the World Heavyweight Championship in 16 minutes. Jimmy came down well after the celebration started for a huge hug in the middle of the ring, raised his arm, got a big pop, and there was eating to end the segment. So this was a beautiful moment for Jey. and it was received incredibly well by fans who loved all of it. Being completely candid with all of you, I was not able to fully enjoy this match live. I had a couple personal things happen just as it was transpiring as WrestleMania started. Everything's fine, but I'm just saving a match grade, let's say, until our second look show because I got to rewatch this. I just do. From what I experienced watching it live, it felt like an incredibly formulaic match. And this is my most important and specific criticism. It didn't deliver on the brutality that the feud suggested. Gunther promised 10 weeks of hell. He covered himself in Jimmy's blood. They just wrestled a normal match without any real devastation or substantial pain experienced by either or both of them. Now, Jay did show more varied offense because he took many of Gunther's own moves, and that was the match story. But Gunther's offense works because he's so big and dominant. Jay just doing the same moves should not have anywhere near the same impact. Yes, it took a lot for Gunther to lose this match. There was a spear, 3 Uso splashes. And I didn't even mind the idea of him tapping out via submission because, as I just mentioned, we see that so rarely. But if that was going to be the booking, shouldn't it have been Jay using his own submission that he broke out special? This guy who Gunther said cannot measure up to him in the ring, Jay's answer was just to steal his own moves, not use his own that he came up with. And since it was a sleeper hold, shouldn't Gunther have just passed out, which would have protected him better? And when you think about all the times Gunther used the sleeper hold to beat people, they didn't tap out. They passed out. If he was going to submit, shouldn't it have at least been a struggle, 30 seconds or so? Gunther tapped out right away. The idea, I guess, is that he was in so much pain that he just wanted to end it because he took the spear and all the Uso splashes, repeated blows to the chest, and then that sleeper hold cut off his oxygen. That did make some sense. I'm not sure the wider audience understood the concept of what they were doing with that sequence. Building drama when you have a submission like that, it's usually the better move. Or at least allowing fans to scream, 1, 2, 3, when someone wins a championship. It's more exciting. The other item that hampered this was the predictability of Jay winning. It was so obvious that you were just kind of waiting for the moment to come. So that was my perspective watching this. It didn't live up to the brutality I expected. The submission finished the way they did it, and just the concept of Gunther tapping out quickly, despite all the damage he took, that was odd. And for a big moment that was all about reactions and slogans and entrances and all that, they didn't deliver a climax to the match that would get the maximum reaction from the crowd, which I just thought was odd. How did this play for you?
Let the record show that the Silver King was the one with all the negativity here on this match. I'm not going to repeat everything.
Well, since you're setting the record, let me be clear. I'm not really being negative. I'm just more pointing out that, like, when I viewed it, it just seemed incomplete to me. That's all.
Yeah.
Like, disappointing.
You didn't like something. That's okay. Just like when I didn't like something, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm aware. But this was actually not great, which the main event was great. That's the difference.
Of all the things you said, I didn't mind most of that. I'm fine with Jey Uso doing his Gunther's moves. He actually did the powerbomb better than Jay did, although that's a credit to how the guy gets up, but he did the powerbomb pretty well. My biggest problem was, and it's not Jay's fault, Gunther should have struggled on the finish. Like a quick tap out after a frog splash. I don't care what the submission is. It's not good for wrestling.
Right.
The whole point is the drama. You gotta, he's holding it. The crowd's getting higher. Oh, he's reaching for the rope. He's not going to get there. Michael Cole's hype. Do it. Tap, Gunther, tap, Gunther.
Totally. Yes.
Yes. It's like, again, I'm not trying to nitpick with this stuff. But
no, this is true.
Wrestling stuff. And Gunther, that's why it shocks me, because Gunther is as old school of a wrestler as you get, that I'm just surprised throughout the process they all agreed, like, yeah, Gunther's going to tap out right away. It took away, if you were going to do that, just get him on the third splash so you get the 1, 2, 3.
Exactly.
So that's the part that bothered me, because the match was kind of formulaic, like you said. But you can get by with the formulaic match if you have a dramatic finish.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't get the dramatic finish, which is what you want for someone who's had this unbelievable story from tag team twin to world champion.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay deserved just kind of a bigger moment with the finish. So that was what it was. Because I see a lot of people crapping on Jay online, being like, "Oh, this is why he's not a good wrestler," blah blah blah. But whatever we've talked about that a million times. I just thought he deserved a better moment for the finish. So, as for the rest of it, I want a yeet flag. That entrance for Jay was pretty cool. The flag people coming down the ramp, except he didn't come down the ramp, which is weird. I looked up in the WWE shop to see if they were selling the yeet flags. They are not selling the yeet flags, although you can buy a throw blanket that's pretty big. I got to say, the Jay stuff on WWE shop, this is the kind of pro wrestling merch that doesn't look like it's pro wrestling merch, and I can see why it sells like crazy. It's like just generally good looking stuff if you like those flashy colors. The entrance was too long, obviously. It was a bizarrely long period of time before he finally actually came out. Like they were like a minute or two into his song before he came out.
Yeah.
And Drew McIntyre actually tweeted during the show a picture of Millhouse from Simpsons saying he's been yeeting for 2 hours. This is during the entrance. But this is why this should have been the second to last match. Because you want the visuals of everybody doing the stuff and the lights flashing and going crazy. It just wasn't as good in the daylight. It's just because this more than anything else would have been better in darkness. And I wish it would have been later in the show. I understand why you lead it off because it's a world championship match, or if you're not gonna finish, you want to open. But I would have saved this. Overall, really happy for Jay. Really well deserved. Absolutely deserved this moment. Absolutely deserves to win a world championship and do it at WrestleMania. What he's done over the last 4 years has been unbelievable. I mean, we go back to COVID and remember, like, Jimmy tore his ACL in that 2020 WrestleMania in the Performance Center when they had that, what was going to be a triple threat tag team becomes just a triple threat ladder match for the tag team championships. Jimmy got hurt in that. And that's when Jay, then Roman comes back, and then Jay gets involved and suddenly becomes a really compelling character and is doing some really good acting work. And Jay got himself to this moment and deserved it. Well, it's not just a catchphrase or whatever. He's been a really, really good character actor, perfectly fine, good wrestler, and deserved of this moment.
What's actually funny is there's a storyline, or there's a through line, I should say. I'm trying to think about it like the timelines, I guess, in Marvel and Avengers. If Jay doesn't get drunk with Cody the night they win the tag team titles, and they don't have that press conference where they start saying yeet over and over and over again, it's quite possible he never becomes world heavyweight champion.
Could be. I mean, he was already kind of saying it around then. I think it was starting to pick up at that time.
It took off.
It did. It
took off when they won those titles and they had that press conference. It went crazy and they leaned into it and they started making the shirts, and all of a sudden he became that Deuces and all that whole deal.
And it takes luck and stuff like that to become to get where you are as a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
And to bring it back around to close the bloodline story on Roman losing everything and Jay ending as a world champion. It's the perfect way to close the story.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't against Roman.
I was going to say that would be the true perfect way to close the story. Jay beat Roman for the title. Yeah.
Jay trying to show he's a main eventer, right-hand guy, the Hell in a Cell with Roman, all this stuff, and getting beaten into submission and basically gaslit into supporting Roman Reigns, and for it to all come back around here where Jay's a champion and Roman is lost and alone. Just terrific. Great storytelling. That is cinema.
Part of me wonders, just to wrap up this match, because I'm glad we're aligned and my perspective on it was similar to yours, given I was distracted and for all the reasons I mentioned. Part of me wonders, though, whether the tap out finish was like Triple H, hell, maybe even Gunther, like thumbing their nose at smart fans for complaining. It was a huge statement either way. The WWE believes in Jay, and not just as a temporary main eventer, because you don't do that booking at WrestleMania for a pop or a transitional reign. So credit to them for going all in. This is not going to impact Gunther at all in the long run. In fact, it probably is going to give his character some depth, that he realizes he can no longer overlook underdogs and disrespect baby faces and stuff like that. Basically, it put a big crack in his armor. But Jay was, despite our distaste for it, he was made to look pretty damn strong in this match, doing it the way he did it. I still wouldn't have booked it that same way, to your point and my point, both of our points. There had to be more drama in the finish. It had to be a more explosive moment when he ultimately won the title, and it was the least explosive that you possibly could do, probably, other than someone passing out in 2 seconds. Tapping out in 2 seconds is pretty much as weak as it possibly could be. I just thought, Chris, it was a huge missed opportunity because this was their 4th match together, and all the criticism was Jay can't level up to Gunther and he's not a good enough wrestler. They had 2 matches, I believe both of them were on Raw, that were excellent. The Saturday night's main event one was not. This was, I think, their 3rd best match, when if we know they can do better, why would you not go all out and have the best match? Why would you not give them 23 minutes and let them put it on an absolute banger and have Jay pull out all these other moves that we know he can do? Why would you keep it so simple? Why would you have him just use Gunther's moves? Again, I know it was a storyline that he was using his moveset against him. I get that. I'm not saying that it didn't make sense. It did make sense. I just think it was the wrong decision.
So it was about 16 minutes, 30 seconds, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Third longest match of the show. But almost every match was shorter than last year's WrestleMania, which I found interesting. Like last year, Rhea Becky opened up with 17 minutes, and that had Becky, who had a freaking 105-degree fever or whatever at the time. So yeah, it didn't match. This had a good build ultimately.
It
by
did.
The end.
Yeah,
they told several good stories, and we were ready for it. And they just didn't. It felt like you knew these guys could give you more because they've both given us more, and we've seen it. And that's why that's why the Jay's not a great wrestler. I hate that stuff. Like, no, he's not an amazing wrestler. No, he's not Gunther, but he's solid, and we've seen these guys do it before. So that was why it was a little bit disappointing.
Is it fair to say this was the most underwhelming match of the night?
Relative to expectations.
Yeah, because people are going to say, like, we expected this to be a bad match, and it was a bad match. See, I told you so, Jey Uso sucks. That's not true. I expected this to be a very good match because I've seen them have a very good match, and I wouldn't categorize it that way. Therefore, for me, it was the furthest that fell below my expectations. But I believe my expectations and your expectations were completely fair to expect a very good match.
Also, of course, I'm always the one who says, I hate the pass out, give me the tap out. And we finally get the tap out. And now I'm complaining about the tap out. I realize
circumstantially, though. I mean,
I know. The other thing, though, I think this match would have been aided by some Kaiser interference to put Jay against the damn numbers game, and then a Jimmy save to even it up, and then you go into the finish. Like I think
they would have gotten a pop out of that, no question. Jimmy running down, sure, and that would have added some energy to it. I like that Jay did it himself. That is something I wanted. I said it on the Ultimate Preview. I just wanted Jay to be his own man, and sure, even if Jimmy didn't actively help him, and he just evened the sides, maybe. I understand why you're booking it that way, why your thought process was like that, but this was all about Jay. It had to be all about Jay. I was surprised that we didn't get interference in other matches in the front of the card. Yeah, it was just him, Moose. All right, let's move on to the co-main event, the WWE Women's Championship. Tiffany Stratton against Charlotte Flair. Wade Barrett did sit-down interviews with Flair and Stratton, kind of doing the kayfabe 2.0 deal, asking about their feud to this point, kind of giving questions about like, oh, you guys actually hate each other, but not saying that really. It seemed to be candid. Charlotte explained that she's been through personal hell over the last year, and she chose Tiffy because she inspired her the most. Again, something not said on their actual build on television. I never saw the full Stratton interview on the countdown. They said there was going to be one. I'm not saying they didn't air it. For some reason, I missed it. This was the co-main event. Stratton got a Barbie box entrance where there were 3 versions on the stage, 2 were screens, and she was obviously the real one in the middle. Boos hit immediately when Flair's entrance started and continued when she got announced before the bell. She came out in a car, like very simply, which would have probably been okay, but LA Knight came out in a car like 2 matches earlier. A different car.
2 cars in 7 matches.
Yeah, but it was like just they came out and then they got out and there was nothing else. There was no extra, right? Now, as was the case all feud, Chris, they both basically wore the same gear. Again, Now Flair did
that's got to be the point. That's got to be on.
But it was terrible as a viewing experience. She had some blue, Flair did, but Stratton had some white with her pink. They looked so similar. Close-up shots, you could barely tell the difference.
Yes.
It was so ridiculous. Okay. So Flair did the thigh driller stuff. Stratton hit 2 perfect handspring back elbows and her rolling senton. Charlotte avoided prettiest moonsault ever. They chopped the shit out of each other. Tiffy avoided natural selection, ate a Liger bomb. There was a strange rolling spot between them. Stratton then hit a powerful spinebuster. Tiffy rolled through a crossbody for a near fall, pushed Charlotte off the top rope before attacking her surgically repaired knee that had a brace on it. Flair locked in the figure 4. She could not convert into the 8. Stratton went after her bad knee. Charlotte got knees up on a PME, moved into a really tight cover for a false finish. Flair hit a flying natural selection, didn't completely grab Stratton. She talked shit and took out Stratton's own knee, but when she tried the figure 4 again, Stratton countered into a roll. Tiffy avoided a spear for a header into the middle turnbuckle. Then she didn't fully connect on an Alabama slam into the corner. Stratton then landed a rolling senton and PME to retain the title. Unfortunate sloppiness in the finish because the match was actually building to a crescendo. The fans still got up for the huge 1, 2, 3. It just could have been a lot hotter in the end if it was smoother and some of those final moves hit. Flair was pretty damn stiff in this match, dude. And Stratton absolutely broke a tooth in the latter half. It looked like it was an incisor. Credit to Charlotte from the standpoint that she always steps up her game for big matches. But this did not come anywhere close to comparing to her best ones. There was a lack of chemistry in parts, and it honestly felt like Charlotte may have been sandbagging Tiffy. Ironically, the messiness from their end of the feud, it carried into the match, both for better and for worse.
Yeah.
The intensity was clear. They laid in some stiff shots both ways, but you could also kind of tell that these two didn't really have the desire to work together, at least not to do business to the best of their abilities. The chemistry lacked. Stratton getting the win, that was positive in that it helped legitimize her as a main event level star, but this should have left us foaming at the mouth for a rematch down the line. Instead, the truth is, I never want to see them wrestle or interact again. I'm perfectly fine with this being the one and only time. Thank heavens Tiffany retained. Tough grade on this one. Even now, as we discuss it, I have no idea whether I actually liked the match. I did appreciate them working the knee into it. That added something to kind of sink your teeth into as a viewer. I'm going 3.75 stars B+. I could actually go up or down a quarter star on review. I need to see it undistracted with fresh eyes, but that's where I sit. It was entertaining, better than I expected a month ago, not as good as I expected over the last 2 weeks.
So I loved this. And I also am not sure if I want to see it again. These two beat the crap out of each other, man. Like, I don't know if it was on the press conference, Tiffany looked okay, and I think it might have been dry blood. And not a chip
that was a bruise on her forehead, if that's what you're talking about.
No. Dry blood in her mouth that made it look like a chipped tooth.
I don't know. It looked like a chipped tooth.
Because in the press conference, her teeth looked okay, so I don't know. But she also had the big welt on her forehead from something. Tiffany, she gives a nasty spine buster. That needs to be in her like regular arsenal and maybe even a finisher type of thing. Like take it from Arn Anderson or something. She does that really well. Do that more. There was a moment where Charlotte like comes down from the turnbuckle or something, or tries to move or something, and she lands on the knee, and that's when the knee becomes part of the match. But she responds to it by going, wait, to Tiffany, which to me, I was like, wait, did she really hurt it? And she's like trying to like stop the match or something. The worked shoot part of this whole thing is what made it so interesting. And that fell into the match as well, where we're thinking, man, are they really hitting each other hard? Or man, is like, did she really hurt her knee a little bit? I thought the knee work was great. Several moments where Charlotte went down and I was like, yeah, maybe she is hurt. Credit to Charlotte. She may have been sandbagging in some other areas. She sold the knee stuff really well. Pretty much the whole rest of the match. I thought that was really good. And ultimately, yes, the right winner. And we got there. There was, do you remember that Charlotte Becky match And
Yes.
was it day one or something like
I
that?
remember. I know exactly what you're talking
And
about. Yeah.
and it was all about how much they really hated each other.
Mhm.
And I loved that match.
That was way
because
better than this, though.
it was a way better match,
Yeah.
but it was the same type of like intensity and stiffness with Charlotte again,
Mhm.
where you're like, I think I know this is a fake wrestling match, but I really do think these two don't like each other. And that's exactly what you want to get out of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
And that's what this reminded me of, just a bit more sloppy for obvious reasons. So I really like this. I was going to give this a 4. I'll give this a 4 out of 5. I think this was a top 3 match for me on the show, at least just in terms of like not great work rate necessarily, but just
Mhm.
like I was really entertained by the wrestling. And that's ultimately what you want to do.
I would put this 3rd or 4th overall on the night. And I think that's fair because of what we're going to discuss next. I don't really have a follow-up here other than, Chris, to say I have no idea what Charlotte Flair is going to do next. Like,
yeah,
who is she going to work with? What kind of match is she going to have in storyline? Can they keep her away from the title and Tiffany Stratton? Does she not show up for another 3 months again? Like, I usually can predict where something's going to go. I have no idea what they do with Charlotte Flair.
It's ultimately part of Charlotte's legacy is that she's only ever been the title. And they and she need to figure out good stories that's not just about the title. And I'm Charlotte. I'm a Flair. I'm a 15-time champion. Look how great I am.
Wouldn't it be how angry?
Else.
How angry would you be if she's like, "Well, I got to have a title," and she just goes and beats Chelsea Green for the United States Championship?
God, you lean into the work, shoot stuff. Have her fight Zelina, and have Andrade come to Zelina's side.
Oh my God. And that's how you pair them back up again? Man, that would be incredible if that actually happened.
Let's do that.
All right, let's move on. Jade Cargill against Naomi. One of the matches we were most anticipating for night one. During the World Women's Title Go Home segment on SmackDown, Naomi surprisingly came out with her glow music, angry at Bianca Belair for not returning her calls or texts. Belair wasn't having it. Cargill came out as Naomi dipped, so she got in Belair's face. That led to Naomi shoving Jade into Rhea Ripley into Bianca, starting a brawl. Naomi and Io Sky were the only ones left standing at the end. This actually worked more for the other feud than this one, so we'll talk about that a little bit more on Sunday. I really did not love Naomi's gear at all. It was incredibly lazy. I thought to myself, she really needs a new entrance theme. And then boom, at WrestleMania, she not only had gear that was probably 100 times better than what she had on SmackDown, and she didn't just have a new entrance theme. She had one that I think on first listen was probably among the best that Def Rebel has created for a non-Samoan, non-Joshi talent in a long-ass time. It was a great presentation for Naomi. Jade's entrance featured an incredibly corny and fake, but yet maybe appropriately so, weather report by Jim Cantoni. So I thought that was kind of cool. He's the Weather Channel guy. She's, Storm and does all that bullshit. So, okay. Naomi hit a sick draping X Factor to ringside. Jade caught her flying, lifting into a vertical suplex and hitting a jackhammer, which was a great sequence. Then she did it again for a fallaway slam and bowed after a kip up. Naomi caught her on the top rope for an avalanche bulldog, hit a split-legged moonsault for a false finish. She also countered Jaded into a pinning combination and locked her in Rings of Saturn. Cargill powered out of that. She caught Naomi on her shoulders and hit a pop-up, turnaround, electric chair powerbomb. She covered, briefly forgetting that was not the finish. Then she lifted Naomi off the canvas, hit Jaded, and got the definitive win. This was the best match of Jade Cargill's career. And Naomi deserves a lot of credit for that. We talked about Naomi potentially getting the win just because she's been doing such great character work recently. But in the end, you got to give the star-making moment to the wrestler who has the greater star potential when you're on the WrestleMania stage. I do not expect for a second that this feud is over here, either between them as a twosome or with Bianca Belair involved as well. There are plenty of ways that this can continue and get stretched out to SummerSlam, maybe even beyond. Jade looked awesome here. It was indeed a star-making singles performance, and I'm not really sure that we could have expected more. I'm at 3.75 stars B+, and when it ended, it was the match of the night to that point, and I wouldn't be surprised if I like it even more on rewatch.
Yeah, it was the third match of the show to that point. Got a little more than 9 minutes. My first thought was like you. How does Jade not get a cooler entrance? Like her entrances on Raw or SmackDown are better than that.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have darkness, so they couldn't do the light.
They
and all the
didn't
stuff.
have darkness. Yeah. You can't do the storm when it's sunny outside. So you're kind of limited there. But Jade's gear, by the way, looked incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Give that one a hey now. Pretty much anytime she shows up. Just real solid, good stuff. Like we expected. That the two of them worked well together. Naomi's been killing it the last couple of weeks. She was on Wall-E Mania as well and cut just a really good promo in front of the crowd about how people were cheering her at Wall-E Mania. And she's like, where you guys been the last year, huh? Like, I was asking for fans to
Good
cheer
point.
me and nobody was doing it. So like she's great. I hope, I don't think this will derail her momentum at all. She's found something here, and whether it's with Jade or somebody else, really looking forward to what she does coming out of this. Ultimately, I understand giving Jade the win. She's a star, move her on to something else at some point. But I'd probably give it about a 3.75 as well.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate for it. It was just really, really, really high quality. United States Championship, LA Knight defending against Jacob Fatu. Knight attacked Tama Tonga in the parking lot on SmackDown, slapped his arm in a car door. That should say slammed his arm in a car door, clearly. He later cut a promo saying all he had to do was take out Solo Sikoa as well, and he could just match Fatu's energy because that's the way he entered WWE. He admitted that Jacob will be a champion someday, but guaranteed he would eat a BFT on Saturday. This was a really necessary go-home promo from Knight. He should have spoken a lot more in the build, but he did get this. We had Knight and Sikoa, lots of work outside the ring. Solo basically was softening up LA. Knight hit a DDT. He was prepared for a jump-up elbow drop. Fatu pulled his leg out for a DQ and an attack. Braun Strowman saved with a double crossbody, so it got turned into a tag team match. Jacob eliminated Braun over the announce table. Knight ducked a Samoan spike and hit the BFT for the win. Knight immediately in this match at WrestleMania hit a neck breaker with Fatu stopping a BFT cold and then hitting a pop-up Samoan drop. Knight landed a crucifix bomb, looked like an arm drag, but he drove Jacob's shoulder into the post twice before hitting a pop-up elbow drop with Fatu standing. Knight stopped a jump-up Samoan drop, hitting a full release avalanche German suplex. Fatu came back with 3 hip attacks and a swanton bomb. Jacob then tried his jump-up moonsault. Knight caught him midair for a BFT, along with that catch pedigree, one of the top 2 or 3 moves of the entire night. And you know what? That Jade electric chair powerbomb was probably the other one. So those are your 3 moves of the night. Fatu grabbed the rope to stop the count. Then he did a jumping senton with Knight's body draped over the top turnbuckle, which was really inventive, plus an avalanche Samoan drop and 2 jump-up moonsaults to win the United States Championship. Haku randomly ran down to celebrate after the bell. It was kind of cool, but it just kind of came out of nowhere as well. This was an excellent bout that stood as the match of the night at the time it finished. It was a legitimately surprising
banger.
And that's because Knight went toe-to-toe with Fatu, who is frankly a superior bell-to-bell wrestler in pretty much every way. Speaking of surprises, not having Solo out there at all was a shocker for me, just given the way the story developed, especially since they worked together just 24 hours earlier on SmackDown. But it was clear that the goal here was to fully establish Jacob as a legitimate title-winning superstar, and you got to appreciate that. The midair BFT was insanity, as good as many of the RKO out of nowhere spots we've seen before. It jacked up the intensity for the finish in a major way, and it did it at a time it was needed most in the match. It was a great match that got an incredible crowd reception, and it was actually one of LA Knight's best overall matches in WWE. I'm at 4 stars A-.
This was the first match where it felt like WrestleMania.
Totally. Yes.
Again. Like it was like, all right, like here's the intensity, and it starts off with the entrance. I don't think you mentioned, but Jacob Fatu comes out with a werewolf mask on, and LA Knight drives up comes up in a Maserati and enters. And this was a great match. I give this 4.5. It's right up there for match of the night.
4.5.
Like
you think this is as good as the main event?
In not in terms of the moment,
the match quality. You think the match quality of this was as good as the main event?
The match quality, yes.
Wow.
Because Jacob Fatu is amazing, and we know that. And I saw everybody talking about how great Jacob Fatu is. LA Knight is so good at this.
He
and
is.
Deserves so much credit because of this and SmackDown. He comes out with the charisma and the energy that is just lacking on so many other parts of the roster right now where everybody's like a little bit timid. He's coming up there confident, looking like he's going to kick ass and doing it. And the crowd feeds off of that. And this match was the classic veteran doing everything he knows he can do to put the new guy over and put him in a really good spot to make him look good. And Jacob Fatu can look good on himself. He's great. But these two worked really well together. And LA Knight basically sold this match on his own.
He did.
And then helped deliver it to the level it needed to get to. And when this happened, I was like, all right, now it feels like Mania again, because LA Knight brought the energy we needed. Jacob Fatu brought the skill and the wow factor we needed. And that's what I just wish. I came out of this thinking like, man, I wish it was just these two guys for like 3 weeks before this match instead of all that.
Yeah. Braun and Solo.
Braun Strowman,
all that
Solo
stuff.
It was a Jacob Fatu Braun storyline with LA Knight just like sliding in there at the end.
Yep.
And doing some really good jobs to sell it as best he could in a week, essentially. And I would have loved for these guys to get more, put them one-on-one in the ring doing promos on each other. We didn't really get into that. I felt like there was so much more we could do, and maybe we still can, but it felt like two top-level pros doing pro stuff. And the show really needed it, and everything really picked up from this point on.
Love your analysis there. I'm fine with calling this the second best match of the show. Zero issue, actually, saying that.
I'll say 4.25.
But I was going to say your match grade. I cannot agree with. I mean, 2.5 is at least I can understand that if you really liked it. But putting it on par with the main event, it just wasn't. I mean, I got to tell you this simply. This was really fun, though. It was a great freaking match.
There was a tweet from someone named Joe Gagne on Twitter. It's about halfway through the show.
Who's that?
He says, it wasn't at me. Somebody retweeted it. But he says,
okay.
You've heard of the Raw after WrestleMania. Can I interest you in the Raw during WrestleMania? and that's basically what the show felt like up until this match to me. This was the one where it felt like WrestleMania.
So I will say, because this came immediately after Jade and Naomi.
Yes.
They turned the tide, and then this cemented that it's a WrestleMania match. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to denigrate Jade and Naomi because that was a WrestleMania match. It was. It deserved to be in that spot. It's just that it got such weak lead-ins that it had to pull more weight for the show than it should have. Everything around it should have been stronger, so it should have been able to shine in their 9 minutes and just that's it. But instead, we were looking at that and saying, well, that's the best match we've gotten so far. And that was problematic because despite them being very good in the ring together, it shouldn't have been the best match we had so far through the first three on the card. And then this came along and it's like, okay, here we go. Because these guys completely delivered. Let's move on, though. Rey Mysterio against El Grande Americano. There's a lot of lead up for this, so just stick with us here. Rey Fenix, Rey Mysterio, and Dragon Lee fought American Made on SmackDown. Chad Gable talked shit to Fenix backstage, putting over Americano, who eliminated him from the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, which we will discuss on Tuesday's show. Dragon and Mysterio got in Gable's face and made the challenge. The heels did a 3-way flying headbutt. The Creeds did a catch lift Brutus ball, which actually looked way better than usual. There was a somehow not convoluted 3-man double stomp by Dragon. Phoenix got a nice run before Operation Dragon and a flying Meteora ended it with Phoenix getting the 1-2-3. Really fun TV match. What stood out from the wrestling was actually Dragon getting as much run and as many featured spots as he has in probably any match so far in WWE. He needed it the most out of the face side. Unfortunately, Mysterio was down injured against the barricade for the final few minutes of the match to the point that WWE didn't even show him on screen. What happened was Julius Creed pulled him out of the ring by his leg. And again, I'm not going to diagnose it. They haven't said officially. It looked like when he did that, he pulled him so hard that he either tore or sprained or something his groin. One listener wrote us saying he was carried out, and we later saw video of that. And it's truly fair to wonder whether him wrestling at age 50, 24 hours before a WrestleMania match, was a good decision. It's immensely questionable at a minimum. Now, you can say it was a freak injury. Age doesn't matter. Maybe. But why put a 50-year-old in that position? Now, my presumption after this was that Phoenix or Dragon would step in. Phoenix is obviously the hot name. He got screwed by Americano in that battle royal, but Dragon has been much closer to the feud on Raw. So let me just kind of move on, Chris, to explain what happened on the countdown for the WrestleMania countdown. Mysterio was termed a game time decision by Michael Cole. There was a hysterical video package that sold the legacy of Lucha Libre and the mask, seemingly building to Mysterio being called a legend, only for it to actually be Americano, who spoke through a voiceover, given he's obviously not fluent in English. Then later on the countdown, Mysterio announced he would be unable to compete, with Phoenix replacing him. And while that was probably the more exciting decision, it's also crazy, by the way, that Penta and Phoenix both got to make their WrestleMania debuts shortly after signing with WWE. That is Dragon Lee now, literally getting screwed twice in as many years. First by Andrade, and then by Phoenix. Now, I think Dragon was injured last year, so it's slightly different, but nevertheless, it happened. He should be turning heel at the disrespect. The only thing making me feel better about it was Triple H calling him the Future in an announcement that happened on this countdown. And we're going to discuss that announcement along with another storyline that developed for Sunday's WrestleMania Night 2 card at the end of the show. So we're going to break down the rest of Night 1. We're going to talk grades for Night 1. And then we're going to discuss those two major news items at the end of the show. Make sure you stay tuned. But also shitty here, Chris, is that you have Chad Gable, who has been on the roster for 9 years. He can't get a WrestleMania match. He's forced to wrestle twice on the Go Home show. Ray Phoenix, on the roster 1 month, gets a WrestleMania match. We need justice for Gable, and we need justice for Dragon.
By the way, Chad Gable's been in WWE for 13 years.
Yeah.
Which I did not realize until I heard him say it this week. He's never won a singles title that's a main title.
Correct.
And
never had a WrestleMania
never gotten
match.
a singles, and he's never had a singles WrestleMania match.
Correct.
So that's crazy.
What did you think of Phoenix over Dragon as the replacement?
It was obvious. I know you like Dragon Lee. He doesn't stand out to me. You know, Ray Phoenix has the higher ceiling.
Absolutely.
It is the guy who's going to go places. I understand him getting the spot. Do I feel bad for Dragon Lee? Yes, but I get it.
I understand it, but Dragon was involved in the story, and it felt like they could have done that. But for WrestleMania, you're not putting Dragon Lee in a spot when you have Phoenix. Just as simple as that. Now, Americano was announced from Gulf of America, even though that had been changed officially to Gulf of Mexico. And Cole pointed that out earlier in the week. I credit Cole and even Pat McAfee here for making the correction live on air, quite adamantly as well. They both made it clear he's from the Gulf of Mexico. He got a full mariachi entrance, all wearing his mask, and had an extreme orange filter, this like sepia, I think is what they call it, filter, like you always see when shows are taped in Mexico, like Breaking Bad. But this was turned up to 15 for the hilarity of it. Americano confronted El Hijo del Vikingo in the crowd and got kicked upside the head. More on that at the end of the show. Yes, Vikingo was at WrestleMania. Fun start as one would expect. Americano hit a blind 450 senton, which was absolutely insane, almost to the point that it looked accidental. I straight up have never seen that move executed ever. He tried to remove Phoenix's mask, but he came back with Blackfire Driver. Americano then pulled the top rope to prevent Goodbye Amigo. He loaded up his mask again. Phoenix at the tightrope PK, but he banged his foot into the plate. Americano took advantage with an ankle lock submission. Phoenix countered out. Americano stopped a springing move with a loaded headbutt. He added a flying headbutt for the 1-2-3 and the win. Vikingo ultimately lifted Phoenix to his feet after the bell and then just cut off. This was the right booking. Just given how over Americano had been, plus Mysterio was removed from the match, who knows what the original plan looked like. Using the loaded mask, it protected Phoenix, though given all of LWO was presumably in the backstage area, you would have thought that they would come down to try to help their brother somewhat, you know? It was a little surprising that this did not get a bigger reaction in the stadium, given how well it had been received on TV the last few weeks. But it was an enjoyable match. There was just nothing WWE could really do to replace Mysterio, even without the star power. It was a TV match on a PLE. It's no one's fault, just is what it is. I was kind of between a 3.5 and a 3.75, a B and a B+. It probably needed 5 more minutes, and if it got that 5 more minutes, I think it would have been received even better than it was.
Yeah, so 7 minutes, 55 seconds, the shortest match of the show.
Yeah, you give this 12 minutes and it's something different. But again, they didn't even prepare a match. I mean, they had to do this in 24 hours, so it made sense.
Right. And Phoenix has been on WWE like twice.
Exactly.
And it's going to be hard to give him more than that. And it's another example of like, and again, it's not their fault, but this was like a Monday Night Raw SmackDown type of match, not a Mania match.
Exactly.
Because of the situation, what it was. And because of the switch, I think we both picked Mysterio to win, but then said after SmackDown on the fastest 15 minutes, if Ray doesn't go, we're picking El Grande.
Yes,
which is what happened.
We did say that if Ray couldn't wrestle, that we would pick Americano. Yes.
I don't understand the switching from Gulf of America to Gulf of Mexico. Like you're already doing the white guy pretending to be the Mexican thing. Like that's way more offensive, I think, than just adding the one other.
Well, he's not pretending to be Mexican. He's pretending to be a luchador.
The whole Spanish voiceover thing, like he's the bad guy. That's the point.
Yeah,
He's doing the offensive thing. That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting that was the part where they felt like maybe they went too far and they reversed it. So I don't know. That's interesting.
Well, you know what? I just like that they showed a level of sensitivity after what Pat did with the, Canadians booing the national anthem and that bullshit.
Well, that's probably part of it.
And that bullshit at Elimination Chamber. The fact that like Cole and McAfee both were like, you know what? We made this change as a company. Alicia Taylor messed up and, stuff happens. No offense to her. She did a great job, by the way, at WrestleMania. I want to shout her out. But she messed up and they wanted to clarify it as quickly as they could. I appreciated that they actually did that, even though you and I initially said that the Gulf of America announced, like, we understood why it might annoy some people, and we certainly don't like the real life aspect of it. But if you're going to do a character like this and a storyline like this, it's a modern reference that like really kind of played into the ridiculousness of all of it. It was AI created and they're doing the voiceover and the mask says American made, even though American made didn't exist until, a year ago. But the guy's supposed to be 80 years old and a legendary luchador. So like, it was fine to have it in, but you know what? The fact that they pulled it out, I actually respect it and I'm glad they did.
It's also notable because McAfee and his crew on Friday were like, infer that someone controversial might show up at WrestleMania, which clearly was not going to happen. But
right, of course.
It also like that part is also like considering the other things WWE personnel said all week. Like,
I know.
That change is a little less controversial than that, but whatever. It is what it is. Ultimately, it was a tough spot these two guys were put in. They put on a great match. I'd love to see these guys go for 20 minutes.
Oh my God.
And we might down the road now. Also, I wasn't sure if this was going to be the end of El Grande because I picked Ray to win and Chad to get unmasked, or El Grande to get unmasked. That didn't happen, and the character's pretty over, so this might go for a bit more. We'll talk about the Vikingo stuff that happened later on too. My only other issue, Michael Cole keeps calling him Grande Americana.
Cole was all over the place during this show. Like I told you, in Living Color, it's a band called Living Color. Everyone knows that. It was very, very odd. And yes, I did catch that as well. Look,
you got to put the masculine.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
The only part of this match that actually bothered me was Cole on commentary. He kept trying to insist Americano was someone else, which I just did not understand why he was pushing a conspiracy theory and all that bullshit, giving it life and credence. Hermano is a luchador legend. He went out there and put on a banger, a total lack of appreciation from the voice of WWE for an all-time great gracing us with his talents. Now, look, I understand Chad Gable didn't get the PLE match I wanted, but Americano did ultimately show out in the spot, and he deserved it straight up. So, credit where it's due.
Even if you like selling it, like Cole was a bit over the top. That's Chad Gable, guys. I know that's Chad Gable. Like,
but why would he push a conspiracy theory like that when it's clearly not him?
It's out of character. Like, at least go with that a little bit, man. Like, make it fun. He's kind of like just so dismissive.
I don't even know what you're saying. It's a clear different person, and it's a legendary guy. He's been wrestling for 80 years. He's gracing us with his presence. He got a great WrestleMania match, got the win in the match, and Cole's out here trying to spout all this BS. It's like, what are you doing, Cole? It's ridiculous. Let's move to the World Tag Team Championships. War Raiders against New Day. New Day got more heat on the WrestleMania kickoff than they probably have in the last 2 months on television. They were actually really good on the kickoff. New Day shit talked George Kittle ringside. Ivar hit his crossbody into the LED board early. The Raiders did a toss, top rope splash as well. Great looking spot. New Day came back with a draping senton to the ring apron. Ivar had a great run with a seated senton, running basement crossbody, double handspring back elbow, and a doomsault. Insanely impressive run from the big man. Xavier Woods broke the fall with a limit break. Eric came back into the ring finally with a pump knee. Kofi Kingston twice prevented War Machine. New Day then hit Daybreak into Ivar's neck with Xavier covering and Kofi holding Ivar's leg down to the canvas, actually under the rope. The referee didn't see any of it. And they won the tag team titles. They ran up the ramp with them like it was an entire robbery. This was a great tag team match that, to what you said earlier, should have main evented an episode of Monday Night Raw. It certainly could have been on WrestleMania if it had a better, stronger storyline. I am 100% convinced the only reason this match was on the card was because they were promoting Clash of Clans as a sponsor. That's it. They didn't even integrate that with the War Raiders, but that is why this was on the card. I am positive of it. As constructed, it was misplaced on the show, as we discussed. Nevertheless, the wrestling was extremely strong. The title change was actually somewhat surprising because of the neck injury storyline. It seemed all set for Big E to come down and help War Raiders. I didn't even piece together that they were the Raiders competing in the Raiders stadium. So like something could have been done with that, but it wasn't. And I would say, well, you don't want to do that if they're going to lose, but Raiders fans are used to losing. So, they could have just done that. Anyway, a very good match. Borderline 3.5, 3.75 stars for the wrestling. It definitely brought the energy down after Jay's win. I don't know that they could have put it anywhere else, but I am, again, I'll repeat for the third time, convinced the only reason this was on the show instead of the TLC tag team match is because of the sponsorship. And that is an epic failure, if so.
You left off the best part, which was that New Day were wearing Giant Gonzalez themed outfits. Unbelievable nod to WrestleMania 9.
I think I missed that. This was the early part of the show where my brain was all over the place.
Yeah. And then commentary did eventually mention it, but they had like the bodysuits with the white hair and all that.
Oh, sick. I missed that.
They were doing Giant Gonzalez, Barrett or somebody made a comment about chloroform too. So a nice callback to reference that Peacock documentary about what was the worst WrestleMania of all time and probably the worst moment of that worst.
Can I ask you a question?
But that's why it was funny.
Let me interrupt you. I saw someone write that the WrestleMania 9 documentary, which I still have not watched, but you have, was WWE rewriting history and making the show seem good. Is that true?
Yes. And the whole idea, the theme of the show, the doc, is this was such a new kind of show that it's what started WWE to try and do different things, and it really changed the direction of the company, which is not true because they went back to Madison Square Garden the next year for WrestleMania 10.
Right.
So yes, they make it. They do make fun of it. Undertaker talks about that match with Giant Gonzalez being terrible and Giant Gonzalez making no sense as a character and looking bad. So like they do poke fun at a lot of the bad parts of it. Mm-hmm. Lex Luger they talk about how Mr. Perfect was not good in that show for whatever reason. So like they do it, but they all they spin it in a big positive
way. Okay.
Which, look, that's what they're going to do.
Sure.
But it makes the show seem not as bad as it is. So, but I still like the doc. They do a good job.
Okay.
With stuff. So we have New Day come out in Giant Gonzalez themed, and then we have the War Raiders come out in Clash of Clans outfits. This was the sponsorship.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what are they wearing? And then Pat McAfee gives this really long explanation of what they're wearing and how it ties into Clash of Clans. This comes right after we got a big Tops advertisement. And I'm like, guys, this is too much advertising on the show. And to your point, I was like, they're the War Raiders in the Raider Stadium. How do you not have them come out dressing like the Black Hole and do that type of stuff? No, they had to dress like the Clash of Clans characters because you just signed another sponsorship. It's like, golly, man, this is too much. The match was fine. It was a letdown because we all assumed Big E was going to be involved in this in some form or fashion. And he wasn't. And so it didn't even meet the low expectations we had, frankly, because of that. The wrestling was fine. The guys did what they could, but there wasn't much of a story or build to this. And we didn't get Big E, and it was what it was. It was a TV match.
I mean, I don't think it's fair to say that just because they didn't do what we wanted, therefore it wasn't good. But I do think that when we discussed Big E and the reason for the match and the concentration on the neck injury and them being big guys, they were basically, it seemed like, telling us that this is what's going to happen and this is why it's going to deserve to be on WrestleMania. And when you don't deliver any of that, it's just like, why would you put this match, on this show? And it just proved that it didn't belong. It proved everything that we said to be correct, basically.
Yep. Like, frankly, I would have rather had Street Profits MCMG here. The one we got on SmackDown.
Well, no, because that had a disqualification finish. But the TLC match, which they're going to be running this Friday, is what should have been in the spot.
Yes, the TLC match that they now scheduled for next Friday, yes, that should have been here.
Yeah.
That should have been the opening match of the show.
Yes,
should
correct.
have been the 4-way, 5-way tag match, TLC. Open up all of WrestleMania. That's how you open a show.
You open with that. You go to Jade and Naomi. You go to LA Knight and Jacob Fatu, and you run the rest of the card, whatever's left. And all of a sudden, this is a big night one of WrestleMania. And you save Jade for later. You know what I mean? Just the co-main event. You bump Charlotte and Tiffany up, maybe the second spot, third spot, sometime around Jade and Naomi. And that card looks completely different for night one. And that's a great prelude, Chris, into what is normally our final segment, but on this show, our penultimate segment, where we're going to give a final grade for night one of WWE WrestleMania 41. Before we get into our final grades, let's remind you about our pre-show expectation grades. You and I both agreed on the Ultimate Preview that night one, we had it a 92 out of 100 in A-. Our Getting Overheads, who voted on Twitter at Getting Overcast, they came in 63% in the A range, 36% B+ to B-, 1% C or lower. That averaged out to a 93.9 out of 100, a 94 in A, the lowest A possible, but nevertheless, a full A. As always, when we give our final grades here on the show, you get the opportunity to go first. Chris, what is your final grade for night one of WWE WrestleMania 41?
I'm going with A-, but I'm going to be slightly down. I'm going to be a 91 out of 100 instead of a 92. And it's frankly, the only thing keeping it from being a B+ is Paul Heyman and giving us that big moment at the end of the main event. Mm-hmm. Because half of this show was was a Monday Night Raw, and we got a title change with Jacob Fatu, LA Knight, great match. Seth Rollins, CM Punk, great match. Tiffany Charlotte, really good match. And then the rest was just kind of okay. Like Jay Gunther we got a big title change, a world title change, but it wasn't what it could have been. A lot more. Mm-hmm. That would have worked as a main event of a TV show, frankly, too. So A-, it didn't get up to my expectations.
That's completely fair. What I found particularly interesting as we hit the midway point of night one was that there were 3 title changes in as many matches, and every bout played out in the most straightforward way possible. In other words, no Solo out with Jacob, no Big E with War Raiders. Jay just beat Naomi straight up. Jay won the championship as expected. The favorites just won, and that was that. Now, don't get it twisted, right? Oftentimes, predictable things are good. But through the first half of the night, everything just felt way predictable and extremely paint by numbers. And then when you combine that with that first hour of the show, that was just like all promotion being shoved down our faces. And it was kind of crazy that completely changed over the next 2 hours. I'm not saying they didn't promote stuff. There's plenty of advertising on the mat and commercials and all that. But they were shoving it down our throats the first hour of the show in terms of bonus stuff that was happening in and around the ring, match sponsorships and the DJ coming out and all that bullshit.
We got Michael Cole telling us how great it is that Xfinity is on the WrestleMania.
Right. Like, why is that great?
First time ever. Yeah. We've got a brand on the sign. Okay. I don't care.
Yeah, congratulations to you.
Excited about it?
Exactly. Right. So like that, they were shoving that down our throats the first hour, and it was a real turnoff. And then I'm not going to say that everything changed down the second half of the card, outside of the main event, of course. But the latter portion of the show had so much more energy. What stood out to me was the main event, and we talked about this earlier. It felt like a WrestleMania match. You could argue the co-main had some of those feels, and as we just discussed, Night Fatu definitely felt that way as well. The rest just didn't. Some of that was the daylight and the venue and the crowd that I mentioned. Some of it was the insane amount of the sponsorships over the first half of the show, first hour of the show. Some of it was that matches just didn't belong on the card or didn't live up to their billing. Jay and Gunther.
Or went very short. By the way, we were about 2 hours into the show with 2 matches left.
Yeah, I think it was 9:40 and there were 2 matches remaining. So 2 hours and 40 minutes with two matches left. What I kind of break this all down to at the end is that this was the most disjointed single night of WrestleMania that we've gotten under Triple H the last 3 years. So there's been 5 nights so far. The 6th obviously is coming on Sunday. This was the most disjointed out of all of them. And yet, I agree with you that it was still an A-. I'm actually down a little further though. I'm at 90 out of 100. I think it just crossed the barrier. I had this firmly as like a high B show, like an 86, something like that before the main event. And those guys were just so incredible. The storytelling was great. The match, the presentation, all of it, that it bumped it up pretty much a full, half of a grade from an 86 to a 90. And that's where I sit at the end, because you cannot just remove that match and pretend like it didn't happen and say, oh, night 1 was a mediocre, night. It was, but with that, it wasn't. It's as simple as that. So you're at a 91. I'm at a 90, slightly below you. Our listeners, Getting Overheads, got the opportunity to vote as well on social media. They did so on Twitter at Getting Overcast. They came in 25% A+ to A, 49% A- to B+, 24% B to B-, 2% C or lower. Excuse me, C+ or lower. That averages out to an 89.975, rounding up to a 90 out of 100. So they agree with the Silver King, an A-, but really we're pretty much all in the same plane. It's an A- for the show. We had that coming in. We had it coming out. Don't forget, the listeners thought it was going to be a 94. So they're actually, their expectation fell lower than yours and mine did. But nevertheless, we wrap this up by saying, still a good night of WrestleMania. It just didn't totally feel like a night of WrestleMania that we've come to expect under Paul Levesque's booking. And going into night 2, I will say, the card feels a lot stronger and a lot more WrestleMania-like. So the expectations for night 2, especially coming out of the main event booking from night 1, even higher than they were perhaps coming out of our Ultimate Preview.
I think so. And as I look at the card, I see a lot more stuff on night 2 that I know is going to be solid, and that I'm looking forward to, and that there are much better stories on night 2 than night 1 as well. So I think we predicted I did A- for both.
Yeah, we both did.
Preview.
We have the same. I think we have the same number. We both said 92 for night 1 and 93 for night 2.
Yeah, so I think I'm sticking there for now.
Yeah, I'm not going to change it. We already said it on our Ultimate Preview. And let me just reiterate, okay, if for some reason you missed our WWE WrestleMania 41 Ultimate Preview, it still applies for night 2. We did it completely separate. Go in our podcast feed. There is a timestamp on that episode for night 2. You can go jump and listen to it. But I told you the show is not over yet. We actually still have a couple things to discuss, because there were 2 major, one's announcement, one's a storyline development that happened on the countdown to WrestleMania, that 3-hour show immediately preceding WrestleMania 41. Let's talk about the significant development first. There's a title match scheduled for night 2. It is Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez defending the women's tag team championships against Lyra Valkyria and Bayley. Well, WWE ran a story during the countdown that showed Bayley having been attacked and laid out backstage. Liv and Raquel obviously denied accountability despite being blamed. And I think we know by now that they tell the truth. They take responsibility when they actually do something. But when they got blamed, they're like, hey, just throw this match out. Why should we defend our titles, if they can't go as a team? Lyra wanted to fight them 1-on-2. Adam Pearce basically said that she had until Sunday to find a partner, or else she would not get the opportunity. Chris, I found this to be a confounding booking decision to do it this way. First of all, it now eliminates Bayley from WrestleMania. And she absolutely deserves to be on that show. She won the title at WrestleMania last year. Second, despite our reservations about this match booking initially, WWE did a legitimately fantastic job developing Lyra and Bayley into deserving number 1 contenders for the tag team titles with that gauntlet match on SmackDown, where they got completely over with the fans. So they did all of that, and now they're not capitalizing on it? Now, look, it's clear the expectation is that it's going to be Becky Lynch making a surprise return to team with her countrywoman. And that will be a massive WrestleMania moment if it does indeed happen. I see no way it does not. But why would you completely sacrifice Bayley for that, especially when she was building the Roxanne Perez feud so well? Neither of them wound up getting truly booked on WrestleMania weekend, and you're doing that all to set up a Becky Lynch return? That really does not sit well with me. If that was the plan all along, Bayley should have been involved in 2 storylines simultaneously. That way she could still have had that match, and she just doesn't in this one. Or you have her get a different partner to challenge for the tag team titles, and you have Becky return on Raw to challenge Lyra for the Intercontinental title. We talked about that like a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. It's a pretty lame way to return Lynch, to take Bayley's spot, if that is indeed what's happening, especially given the wide variety of options here that existed. So, look, I don't want to judge too much before it actually happens, but when I saw this storyline transpire and it became readily apparent that it's going to be Becky Lynch, I was just dumbfounded by it.
Something had to have happened, right? Bayley, some sort of injury or something.
She's reportedly healthy.
Because nothing makes sense. Why would you rush together Bayley and Lyra as a team, have them go through a gauntlet match and beat all of your other tag teams to get to this moment, just to then pull her a week later?
And look amazing doing it and get huge crowd reaction on Friday night.
That cannot have been the plan. You cannot tell me when they were doing that gauntlet match that the plan was to pull Bayley. So either Bayley got hurt or something came up, or they just decided at the last minute to change their mind. We know Becky Lynch is there. There was a video of her, I think, celebrating Seth's win going around.
In gorilla
I think
position.
she has said she's done wrestling, but we know she's always working people.
No, she re-signed months ago. We reported it on buymeacoffee.com/gettingover.
But I think it's pretty clear who Lyra's partner is going to be, and it's not Becky Lynch.
Oh,
it's Randy Orton.
Amazing.
He doesn't have anybody else. That's what it's going to be.
That'd be great.
That would be pretty cool. I also, actually, for real though, I would not rule out Alexa Bliss.
Sure.
Because we want her on the show. We also think Liv and Raquel are retaining anyway.
But to the point though, right? If you're going to bring Becky back and get her involved with Lyra, again, the Intercontinental title feud makes so much sense. Lyra beat Becky for the NXT title. They're countrywomen. She wants to work with her, like all that. And you didn't have a spot for Alexa. You could have done Bayley and Alexa as a makeshift tag team and gotten both of them on the show. That's what I'm getting at. That's why it's so frustrating.
Yeah, no, again, I refuse to believe that this was the plan all along.
We're going to have to find out because it
makes no sense.
Yeah, it's really, really frustrating. You know, we're making a lot of suppositions here, okay? We'll find out Sunday when it actually happens, if it is Becky. And I don't want to downplay the fact of Lynch coming back is a major WrestleMania moment, and it'll be awesome to have her back. But something's fishy here. It's as simple as that. The other major item from the countdown, WWE announced through a video package narrated by Rey Mysterio that it has purchased AAA, the Mexican promotion. The first co-promoted event is going to be WWE Worlds Collide, held between NXT and AAA wrestlers on Saturday, June 7th in Los Angeles at the Forum. All of WWE's luchadors, except for El Grande Americano for some reason, plus Stephanie Vaquer and Vikingo, who is one of the top luchadors in the world. You've seen him in AEW last year, but not recently. They stood on the countdown desk for the full announcement. AAA brass was also up there, and the woman representing them, she looked like a cartel boss, straight up. Triple H put everyone over. He called Dragon Lee the future, which I thought was really important because he didn't get chosen for the Americano match. And Stephanie was the only one. Let me make this extremely clear. Stephanie Vaquer was the only one of the group who got her name chanted by fans. Not Rey Mysterio, not Andrade or Penta or Rey Fenix, Stephanie Vaquer. But all the luchadors, they did get pops individually. And this is obviously massive, massive news. I wanted to mention it here because it's a big deal. But we're going to have to put a pin in this for a long-term discussion and probably do that on our Tuesday WWE episode. My quick opinion off the top is this felt like a long time coming. WWE has wanted a foothold in Mexico forever, but truly competing with AAA and CMLL, it's basically impossible. CMLL has kind of overtaken AAA recently, especially from a creative perspective. So WWE, I don't know what they're going to do or how they're going to do it, but they're going to have a lot of work to do. Mexico is obviously a massive wrestling market. From a business standpoint, assuming the money is right, this is probably going to be hugely successful for them. The acquisitions of Penta and Rey Fenix, they make even more sense based purely on their talent, sure. But given the AAA deal and the stable of luchadors now in WWE, it's even more integral to have them on the roster. Lastly, Vikingo in a WWE ring one day. I have no idea how that's going to work. The man is an absolute psychopath. And Vikingo against Americano, that is a match people have literally waited decades to watch. So this, Chris, was an absolutely crazy announcement. Came out of nowhere in terms of it happening on the WrestleMania countdown. And like I said, definitely want your first blush reactions here, but we'll have to sink our teeth into it probably later this week.
My first reaction was it's still wild to know that WWE has an active business relationship with TNA and is buying AAA and promoting it. Like it just really I know this stuff has been going on for a few years now, but for anybody who remembers the pre-Triple H era when they refused to acknowledge any other companies that existed, just wild. It does make sense for, like you said, I think Nick Khan had even said recently they want more stars from Mexico and Brazil and India. I think he said they were trying to go for. So business-wise, that all makes sense. The amount of talent across the company now between NXT and all these companies is just, it's unbelievable how far WWE is. Like they've come such a far way in terms of how they approach talent. I do think that AEW's work with these other promotions probably motivates them more to kind of do that type of stuff and get it done. So AEW deserves credit. I mean, they've done Forbidden Door and all that type of stuff. And thirdly, I'm not really familiar with the Mexican companies and everything going on. I just saw after the fact, after the announcement, that apparently the most recent thing going on in AAA right now is that JBL is down there cutting promos about how Alberto Del Rio is God's gift, and also that Mexico is a third world country. So
yeah,
I know he's the heel and everything, but and that's again the Mexican company. They're running it, but we're back to all that again. I think we won't see Alberto Del Rio in a WWE ring again, but a lot going on there. Oh, and then thirdly, crazy to imagine a year ago that Penta, Rey Fenix, and Vikingo are in WWE and not AEW.
It's legitimately wild, especially when you saw that Vikingo Kenny Omega match on Dynamite, and you're like, oh my God, that match was absolutely insane. This would never happen in WWE, and it still won't because Omega's not in WWE, but like, we could very well get one day Vikingo and Seth Rollins, or, you know, whomever, you name someone, Vikingo and Penta, right? In WWE, whatever the case, or Gunther. And you're just like, holy crap, the possibilities here are crazy. To give a little bit of insight, CMLL is a little bit more normal. And when I say normal, I mean, I don't want to even say American. That's completely not what I mean. But traditional when it comes to Lucha Libre and wrestling. AAA, their storylines and shit are out there. And Conan is their booker. And they've only become more out there and worse with him as their booker. Apparently, they're initially running a storyline since this takeover that like JBL now owns it or is managing it or whatever the case. I don't know if Alberto Del Rio is their champion or he's just a prominent figure there, but there is a massive problematic, deal there with Del Rio and WWE and shit that's happened and stuff he's said and stuff he's done in his life. And I cannot imagine WWE would want to be associated with him. But Mexican Lucha Libre culture is such where I'm not saying he's necessarily well liked there because I don't know that to be the case, but he's been operating there for a while and people are still watching their product and, doing all that stuff. The question is going to be, is WWE going to drastically change AAA? And if they do, initially you would think, oh, that's going to be for the worse. But AAA is in such a poor creative state right now that WWE coming in and like making it a real Lucha Libre company again, for lack of a better term, might actually be a huge improvement for them. So this is all a huge question laying out there, but I did want to address the last thing, or one of the things that you said. WWE now owns AAA. It has a partnership with TNA, and it has a partnership with Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan. AEW bought Ring of Honor, so that's the TNA equivalent, and it has partnerships with CMLL and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, they definitely have the stronger partnerships, AEW does. CMLL and New Japan are just straight up better in pretty much every way than AAA and Noah. But both of these companies are now fully aligned in the United States, Mexico, and Japan. And that is immensely interesting as this kind of moves forward. It's almost like a game of Risk to a degree. With WWE and AEW going head to head, WWE has a way bigger and greater start, both domestically and globally. But it's going to be real curious to see the way this transpires over the next 5 years or so.
Yes. And this is why competition is good and important. And we don't want there to be one thing that runs everything. Even though WWE is now controlling and owning more pro wrestling than they have ever, there is also more competition. And that's good.
It is indeed. Chris, allow us to end on that note, because we have hit the 2-hour mark here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, and that's just for a night one WWE WrestleMania 41 instant analysis. I will remind one more time, we're going to be back, same bat time, same bat channel, 24 hours from now, with your WWE WrestleMania 41 night 2 instant analysis. If you need a preview of that, hit our podcast feed. You can listen to the Ultimate Preview Night 2. There's a timestamp for it, for WWE WrestleMania 41. Also in the feed, our NXT Stand and Deliver instant analysis. Yeah, this is not the first instant analysis that the Silver King put together today. Got that one done during the WWE WrestleMania Countdown show. Make sure you listen to the instant analysis of Stand and Deliver. And just a reminder, we'll be back on Tuesday with a WWE episode, Raw After WrestleMania, second look at WrestleMania. And then Wednesday, a second look at NXT Stand and Deliver. And of course, a breakdown of what happens Tuesday on NXT. On the way out, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast, full-length audio episodes, video interviews there as well. Follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can vote in all the polls for WWE WrestleMania 41 Night 2 on Sunday, and you can send in questions and comments for the show. That will make our episodes next week. Please remember,
It's all about the five.
so head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read that on the show, but please leave the 5-star ratings on Spotify. That is immensely important. And don't forget,
I happen to love the number 5.
hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover, sign up. Bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, exclusive news analysis every week. We had a big post on WrestleMania. A lot of people have been reading it, and we appreciate that. Thank you all for listening to this special WWE WrestleMania 41 Night 1 instant analysis edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. We'll be back in 24 hours doing the exact same thing. For Vintage Chris Vanini, this is the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.